Welcome to episode 279 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Victoria Fratz and Aaron Fradkin. They are a writing-producing duo who just did a film called Electric Love. We talk about how they wrote that film and raised the money for it. They were able to get some product placement and corporate sponsorship for this project, and we talk about that and how all that came about as well. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 279. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing Victoria Fratz and Aaron Fradkin. Here is the interview. Welcome, Victoria and Aaron, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thank you for having us.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business? And Victoria, why don't we start with you and then we'll circle back to you, Aaron.
Great. So I grew up in Maryland and I went to Towson University. I graduated with basically like heading out of college to do a job in marketing. I wanted to be a creative. I wanted to be a filmmaker, but in Maryland, I had absolutely no idea how you can leverage that into a paying job. So I did filmmaking adjacent, which I consider to be like PR, marketing, advertising. You still get to be creative, but it's a little bit more of a business oriented. So, I mean, they're both business, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So then I was able to do marketing consulting and move out to Los Angeles. And while I was out here, I started dipping my toe further and further into the straight up entertainment pond, trying acting, trying to build my social media. And then along the way, I met Aaron, and he brought me along to the writing process of Electric Love.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, Aaron, maybe you can give us a quick background as well.
Sure, I'll give the spark notes. So I grew up in a small town in western Massachusetts, Northampton. I went to college in Boston University, and then I actually graduated in Los Angeles as part of a BU internship program that they have out here. And so that sort of like eased me into this move that I've always known I wanted to do since I was 12. I always knew I wanted to be in filmmaking in some way. And so I moved out here, I think in 2010, had a couple odd jobs here and there working for like commercial production companies and agencies. And then when I was 22, I made my first movie called 15 North. And that was very much like a film school crash course. And over the next several years, I did a lot of music videos and short films and web series. And and then just a few years ago, wrote Electric Love, which was my second feature.
Okay. That first movie you mentioned, was that a short or was that a feature?
So that was a feature film.
Okay, that just right out of the gate.
Yeah, that was very much of a way to sort of prove to myself that I had what it took, I guess, to tell a cohesive story. Because, you kind of have this idea in your mind that you're able to do it. But then when you actually, buckle down and make a movie, a lot of times people can be overwhelmed and be like, I had no idea it even required this much work. So, I kind of knew that. And so I wanted to just prove to myself that I could tell a cohesive story. And then with Electric Love, I decided to actually get a little bit more personal, a little bit more intricate with the storytelling method, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so perfect. So let's dig into Electric Love here. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or a log line. What is this film all about?
It follows various couples in Los Angeles and their experiences using dating apps.
Okay, perfect. And where did this idea come from? What's sort of the genesis of the story?
So it very much came from a lot of frustrations that I had dating in Los Angeles. It's kind of comical. It's funny, but at the same time, when you're in it, it's very frustrating, and so it causes you to sort of look inward and at least for me, ask myself, what the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I meet someone? Why is it so difficult to make a real connection? And, maybe it was the dating apps, maybe it was me, maybe it was other people, I don't know. But I sort of took that frustration, and it was a very cathartic experience to sort of write this first draft, which I always describe as being very male centric. And then when I met Victoria and she came on board, she really brought home the female perspective of things, which just turned it into what it is now.
I see. I see. And so, how did you guys meet? I think maybe this is a good time to just mention that. Are you guys a couple, or you just okay? Okay. So maybe give us just a little bit of background on that, how you guys met, and then why you decided to collaborate. Because I know there's a lot of couples out there, and I think writing with your partner can be fraught with problems as well. It might actually be difficult. So maybe you can talk about that. How did you guys meet, and why did you guys decide to collaborate together?
Sure. So we met in an audition room. Aaron was the director for a WizKid music video. I went in as a potential actress for it. I did not get the part. However, I had already looked up his portfolio and I really liked his work. And so, with it as an actor, you're not going to get a lot of stuff. So I didn't really mind not getting the part, and I wanted to work with him. And I had a few short film concepts like prepared and written. And so I very nervously direct messaged him to set up a business meeting to see if he would like to come on as a director. And, we just, a friendship very, very quickly blossomed, and a business relationship, which had romantic undertones, at least for me. And, then we became a couple, like pretty, a month or so as we were collaborating.
I mean, yeah, you meet a lot of other creators out in Los Angeles, as I'm sure you know, and, a lot of the times LA very much draws the most talented, aspirational, motivated people, but it also draws people that are just the most full of shit. And so you never really know what you're going to get. And so when I met up with Victoria, I was very pleasantly surprised by how organized and motivated and just genuine she was. She showed up with this short film idea that she wrote and had like a manila folder with an outline and a script, and sort of was looking to get like a budget breakdown of things, sort of like looking for very practical advice on how to actually move forward with her project.
And did you guys go and make this short film?
That ended up not happening. He was already about to enter pre-production on a short film that he was prepared to do. And I think based on that meeting, and then us just working at coffee shops together for a few days, he asked if I wanted to come on as a producer on that short film. So then that one took over time. I had still been holding on to my short, but then when the Electric Love concept, really became a collaboration, that took up all of our time. I wanted to make the short, but then when you're making a feature film and it's really just being run by two people, it takes up every single waking minute to this day of your time.
Sure. So let's talk about the actual collaboration. Maybe you can kind of describe how you guys did it. Did you sit in the same room and come up with an outline, then divide up scenes? Did you one person's at the keyboard, one person is yelling at the other person? Maybe just describe sort of what your collaboration looked like, because I know for every team, there's a different way.
For sure. Well, you wrote the first draft.
I mean, I wrote the first draft, and I think that's probably the hardest part, is just sort of regurgitating what you have in your mind on paper. And so we had something to work with, and I think we sort of just had lengthy discussions about, after Victoria read what I wrote, we had long discussions about how it can be improved. And then I think I would sort of go try to make some adjustments based on our discussion. And then occasionally Victoria would actually take full scenes and say, let me just write it. And she would write something and then send that back to me. And it was a very much back and forth, open format, collaborative process. I do remember there were a couple weeks where we were trying to figure out what the theme of the film was, and what it is that this film really is about. and we really took out a whiteboard, and we were just sort of like outlining all the stories of all the various characters and sort of imagining like, okay, how can we connect these? And it was just very much a collaborative process in that way.
Yeah.
I see. I'm curious too what writing teams do in terms of like contracts. Did you guys spell something out? Was there just sort of a verbal agreement? Hey, we're going to go and write this, and then we're going to try and produce it ourselves. Did you put something down on paper that, hey, if we don't produce it, how are we going to share the writing credit? I'm just always curious to see what people do. And believe me, I'm the guy that's done very little with that. Usually it's just friends I've written with. But I'm just always curious to hear what other people are doing.
Well, we do actually have contract. We actually wrote a contract with each other. Sort of. I think it's more symbolic than anything else.
Well, it sets expectations. It's just even if no one's ever going to sue anybody, it's good to have that stuff. So.
Well, at the same time of creating really starting the pre-production, we also had to create our production company, something for the production to live in, and so we had to draw up contracts for that, like our co-ownership of the company. And then alongside that, we did some contracts for the script and ownership. And then I remember it was pretty early on. We were walking into the apartment, and you said something like, "Oh, and by the way, I think you should get a Coke," because at this point it was still early, and so I had only been like contributing a certain amount or whatever. And he was like, "By the way, I wanted you to know that like I think that you have certainly contributed plenty. You should have a co-writer credit." And my response was something like, "Well, of course." I was like, "Yeah, definitely." But that was more because I knew I was going to go the distance on this project, and I wasn't going to be ending my work on it anytime soon. So I was like, "Yeah, so we're in this together completely. Like, let's do this."
I remember having a conversation over drinks at a bar where we were just talking about like who's going to have like how much stake in the film,
right?
Sort of percentages, just like that, and. It was a pretty easy, not so dramatic conversation at all.
It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah.
It was a pseudo Shark Tank type of pitch. Like, all right, I feel like blah blah blah.
Yeah, I gotcha. So there must have been times during this collaboration where you did not see eye to eye. And how do you get past those moments? And what did you guys do to just work on those and come to some sort of consensus?
I mean, I think when you enter into a writing partnership, you kind of have to, and you hate when I use this term, but you have to be willing to kill your babies. And if I think you both have to agree on everything that ultimately makes it into the script, unless one person is literally just so committed to that idea that they're willing to risk it all to get that one idea that the other person might disagree with into the final draft. But ultimately, if we disagree on something, I say either move on or put up a really good argument as to why it needs to be in there.
And I would say that, I'll also add a little bit of a personal element. We had just started dating as we were writing this script, and it's a romantic comedy, so we used a lot of our own romantic dating experiences. So some of those conversations could be a little early for a new couple, a little just too much. And so occasionally it would just get to a point of feeling stressed or feeling like, why are you this we have the two leads, we have a male lead and a female lead. I feel like the male lead is being painted as a perfect angel, and the girl is always is being villainized, and I don't think that's right. A lot of those things were coming up as a conflict in our writing process. But at the and I'm a little bit more of I'll get a little bit more heated over these discussions. Aaron keeps it really level, which I really appreciate, because that always will mellow me out. Remember, we're doing a professional project. This is a professional project. This isn't our personal relationship. Let's keep it professional. So I've definitely grown as a writer, and also just a person who's able to compartmentalize emotions in the right place in the right time. Mm-hmm. But I think that's important for any writer, especially if you're writing with your partner. Is a lot of times, always as a writer, you're going to draw from your personal experiences. It's going to be really close to you, and you have to remember that your partner wants that project to be just as successful as you do. They just have a different vision, and you need to really hear it, or you need to really articulate it better. Whatever it is, you'll get there.
And I believe that's what makes something great is sort of having these not so easy discussions and ultimately finding a third solution. The first idea that either one of us comes up with is not necessarily the best. No matter how good of an idea you might think it is in the beginning, there's always probably a third better option.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're working on a screenplay, how much time do you spend outlining versus how much time do you spend actually in final draft writing script pages?
I love a good outline. Like an outline's one of my favorite places to really spend some time. So I don't even know. Like I'll spend several days, even a week on an outline. We're just, first you get that really truncated skeleton, then you go down to a more like filled out version, and then for writing, I write really quickly, but then I always go back and proofread. So
I've sort of found that like my method, every time I set out to make an outline, I end up just start writing the dialogue anyway. So I've sort of just, recently just opened up Final Draft from the get-go and just sort of started writing as much as I possibly can. And then if I sort of like hit a point where I'm like, all right, where does it go from here? Then I'll sort of outline the rest of the way. I mean, that's very like, it's not the most traditional way to do it, but it's just, I always I always get very excited about ideas. I just want to like, I see like the whole opening and like the middle and everything, and I just want to get it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So on this particular project, obviously you have each other to bounce ideas off of. But were there some other people that you used for development? Some trusted friends, actors, writers, producers that you sent the script out to? Maybe talk about that a little bit. And I'm always curious too how you handle those notes. You send it out to how many people, and then you start to get notes back. And how do you actually work through those?
Yeah. We have a whole network of people that we use. His parents, some of our friends who are writers. The lead, Zachary, we sent it to right in the drafting process. Another friend, and yeah, everyone's going to come back with their opinions. I think that if there's a center, if you can find some common thread in everybody's feedback, then you have a problem. Then you need to go and like really take that feedback. If you discuss the feedback, so person A comes back to me and says, yeah, I really don't like this character, I found them to be really annoying, or this action that they do is really annoying, I'll like ask that a little bit more. Well, did you see what we were trying to do with this and this? And if their answer is always no, then it's just not on the page, and you need to fix that. Because if the people can't read it and see exactly what you're trying to do, and they don't understand the entire intent of the character, then it's not there. So you need everything on the page before you're gonna rock and roll further.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If several people have the same note, is probably something to take a look at. It also requires you to sort of be a little bit of a detective, because I don't think everybody is able to articulate exactly what the issue is, or they might say it's one thing when in reality that what they're saying is solid, but it's maybe they're dancing around like another issue. So it kind of requires you to sort of really like trust your gut, and I think that's sort of what has led me personally to grow as a writer, is sort of being more honest with myself, and hearing what people have to say, and then asking myself genuinely, remove my ego and ask myself genuinely, can I actually really see what they're saying? And or if they're saying something, maybe they're trying to say this instead. And yeah.
How did you guys approach for something like this? How did you approach genre requirements? This is on IMDb. It's listed as a romantic comedy. There are certain things, I think, like, for instance, it kind of has to have a happy ending. I mean, there's certain things that we sort of think of with romantic comedies, and I'm curious how you guys approach that, subverting some of those things, trying to lean into some of those things.
I mean, for me, this is probably not the correct technical answer, but we wrote it, and there was comedy and there was romance. And I was like, it's a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
And what about structure? You mentioned that, or I saw on IMDb, this is like an ensemble thing, so there's a couple of different intertwined stories. How did you approach just sort of screenplay structure with this? A beginning, middle, and end for each story? Is it one story, then one story, one story? Are they intermingled? Maybe talk about that, and maybe some of the challenges that you ran into.
So we wrote it very much like a television series would be written, where you have, various leading characters, all with interconnected stories. And first you focus on one story, and then you go to the next, and you go to the next, and then you go back to the first one. And that was sort of like the structure throughout. So it read very much like a TV series. I remember structurally, one of the main things that we had to really rework was having our lead couple, played by Zach Morin and Mia Serafino, meet sort of around that 30-page mark.
Sooner if possible.
Yeah, originally we had them meet like around like 40, 45 pages, and we were just thinking like this is too much exposition. We really want them to meet sooner and really just get to like the heart of it. And so that actually required more work than we had anticipated.
Right.
How do we like really just speed up everything at the beginning and just get right to like that turning point, the end of the first act, leading into the second.
And then maybe for some more visual workers out there, like I live by my whiteboard when I'm writing and creating. So I actually, outlined every story point for each character. So you've got like each of your characters, and I think I had them in some sort of circle, and then each of the things that happen to them, their beginning, middle, and end, and then arrows that were interweaving them as to when they're going to be reacting and interacting with these other characters, so that it all made this like perfect woven, circle to be complete. So visuals like that actually really help me, because if it's all in a page and I have to flip around from page to page, I'm gonna miss something. I'm gonna forget a thread.
Yeah, good tip. Okay, so now you're done with the script, and you guys want to go out and produce this movie. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about raising the money. How did you find a producer who went out and raised the money? Did you guys go out and raise the money yourself? Maybe talk about sort of the actual logistics of getting this thing into production.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of filmmakers and producers would say don't do this. I self-financed a lot of it, but only to a point. Victoria, this is where she came in huge. She spent months reaching out to brands and seeing if these brands wanted to either
do product placement,
right,
product
do some sort of product placement and integration, like giving us food, for example, for catering, or providing a location in exchange for credit, and we would feature their logo in the film. And then we would also just actually get some donations from brands as well.
Yeah, so it was really like he had a certain threshold, and then I closed the gap with my marketing expertise.
And did that actually work, reaching out to brands? And maybe you can even talk about some of the brands that you brought into this, and what did you actually do to pitch to them? Because I'm sure these big brands get pitched, a million times a day. So what is the determining factor for you guys that they chose you guys versus the other projects?
Well, let's see. The first thing that I always do, and I'm sure every producer out there does this, is I make a really kick-ass deck. So, an entire overview of what the project is and like the financials, and then where the metrics are, like where are people going to be seeing this, how many eyeballs are going to be on it, just like any advertising deck. And then I just pitch, you can find brand names anywhere, like just find any brand. It does not have to be Coca-Cola, because if you have Coca-Cola or McDonald's or Starbucks CEO's contact number in your phone, you probably don't need to raise money or ask them for money. You probably already are doing pretty well. So I would recommend that you find, what's the 5th major coffee company on the list, one that's not as well sought after, or even the 20th. And then they want a little more exposure because they're a brand new company. They're going to have a little bit less to contribute as far as like available funds, but every piece of money is a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of like how many calls are you willing to make, and how many of these brands can you really organically integrate into your script. So one example would be, we had a brand called 5-4. They're a clothing company. They do men's and just men's clothing. And so we had them style the entire male cast. So like everything that we needed for our male cast of a certain like size and stature was available to them. And then they also contributed a financial, portion to the movie as well. And so then to take care of them, the stars or the lead, at least, he's wearing 5-4 all the time, always. There's even a jacket that says 5-4 on the back that like is a little, there's a moment where he like turns, but then it's gone, so it's not too in your face. And then there's a line where it's mentioned because he's subscribing to that 5-4 service, and then it's in the thank you at the end. So
it's a little bit shameless, but also organic, So it makes sense in the story.
It makes sense, and that's what we were always trying to do: make sure it's really organic, make sure it's not too in your face, but like also they're helping to fund it, so we have to do what we said we were going to
do. Yeah. So with this 5-4, and it's not a brand I know anything about, but was that something? Did you have a prior relationship before them? And if not, like what is that? Like what does the initial pitch look like? Do you just email them? Do you pick up the phone and cold call them?
So yeah, I I didn't have a prior relationship to them. I am almost positive the reason I saw them, I just saw a billboard for it and I had not heard of it before. And so I said, well, if this is a new billboard, this is a new marketing campaign, they must be looking to get out into the masses. So I just wrote them down on this like massive list I had going as a potential brand. And then I think I just emailed their generic contact, and then the right person found me, and then, you know, the dialogue went from there. And really, you're gonna always kind of get the brush off until you have that deck that I mentioned, that really solid, like, metrics driven deck. Because if you can show them, like, yes, you don't know who I am right now, but here are the stars that we have cast, here is the viewership that's going to be at least guaranteed just based on the marketing that we're going to be doing, this is what your conversion would be if you were able to contribute blank. You know, so it's kind of like, really just like selling ad space.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm curious, are these people coming on, or these brands, are they coming on as investors? So if this movie makes a ton of money, are you going to repay them, or it's more of just they're more like a marketing spend that they're doing?
Just like a marketing spend. So if you put your brand in a page on Southwest magazine, that you're not going to get a cut of the sales for everybody that, you know, buys a, sure. So it's straight up advertising. We take care of that in the movie, and then that's done.
Okay. And you mentioned also that you did some of this for locations. And I found one of the disadvantages of shooting in LA is the minute you say, hey, can we shoot a movie here? It's like, sure, it's $5,000 a day, because everybody's sort of on to it, as opposed to somewhere else in the country where they just think it's a cool thing to do. So what was your pitch to locations to get them for free?
Well, some of the locations would play ball with that. You know, we found it was Maze Rooms, the escape room that they did a nice trade with us. And that was, again, I just called them and said, hey, this is what we're doing, you know, and we'll mention you, and it'll look really slick. And they were like, okay, yeah. So that one was actually just, I don't know, luck and
the grilled cheese truck was great.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not a location, but I mean, I guess technically that's the truck. So they're there, like we used a parking lot. And then some of them really will not, as you mentioned, they will not play ball with you. So the best example of this is we had to lock 2 locations. One of them was like it was supposed to be a little dive, backyard, cantina, and then the other one was meant to be like a mansion in the hills. So we find the mansion in the hills. We're like, all right, awesome. We knew it was going to be a higher price point. We thought it was going to be our most expensive. And so we're like, cool, we got the mansion, and we did our best to negotiate, whatever, that happened. Then when we go to the cantina, we find one that's just off the side of the road. I'm looking at it like, look at how charming it is. And I bet they would love to have a movie shoot there. That same like confidence, like we're going to get this basically for free. And we roll in and they are like, oh no, we had a Super Bowl commercial here a week ago. Before that, it was in a Law and Order episode. Oh no. And they ended up being our most expensive, even more than the mansion. This little backyard, quirky spot. And I spent a couple days like, calling, please, can we do that? Can we do this? No, just no. And there was no other backup. So we used it, and I think I guess got a couple $100 shaved off of it, but in the scheme of things, that was not much.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
I'm curious too, when you're pitching these brands, as I was researching this interview, I noticed, Victoria, that you have a large social media following, and I'm curious if that played into your ability to pitch to these brands. Was that something you mentioned, and was that something that they seemed very interested in? And was there even some promise that you would promote them through your social media channels?
Sure, that's a great question. I would say I'm thinking back to how I corresponded with each of these brands, and I didn't reach out to them through my Instagram. I reached out to them through like Social House Films email. But I was more confident because I knew that at the very least I could offer them that. So grilled cheese truck, 5-4, anyone, it didn't matter. I will also tag you in my story. So at least, regardless of whatever happens in this movie, at least you are going to get this advertising from me. So I personally can guarantee that, which is really great. That's why everyone should be building their platforms wherever they're doing. Regardless of, in smaller audience is perfectly fine too. Whatever you've grown, those are eyeballs on your product. So absolutely use that to your advantage. I know I did, and it makes me more confident too when I pitch with brands because I work with brands so often.
Perfect. So I'd like to just wrap up the interview by asking the guests just to mention something they've seen recently that they thought was really great. Netflix, Hulu, whatever, movie theater. If there's just something that maybe hasn't gotten a lot of attention that you thought was really great, we can mention it. And I'm always looking for interesting things to check out.
Well, there's this little movie that hasn't gotten a lot of attention recently called Green Book. No, I mean, it won Best Picture, but that was actually like the best film that I've seen like, recently. I really enjoyed that.
Let's see. Well, we should certainly take this as a chance to plug our friends' movies.
Yeah, always the marketer. Yes,
We should to help our friends. I would say we have a friend, another friend who's very much in like a similar category as us, similar budget, similar everything. And his name is Stephen Fine, and he just released his movie Love Shot, which released like a week or two after ours. His is like a hitman love story.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
It's funny. We see like our films pop up on like the same categories on all these platforms.
We both went with the same distributor, so we're very much in league with each other. And then another one would be a TV show, which is decently well known, but I don't know if anyone else is watching it besides us. Is The Orville. I love it. More of it. Keep it on the air. Watch it.
Yeah, every week we watch. It's Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah. So okay, good. Well, good recommendations. How can people see Electric Love? What is the release schedule, and where can people find it?
So you can rent or buy Electric Love on Amazon, iTunes, Fandango, DirecTV, Spectrum, Time Warner, Comcast, Xfinity. They're all changing their brand names, so I'm like, what are their new names?
Basically all
Anywhere
digital platforms. Yeah, it's easiest to find on Amazon for anyone who has that.
And if you DM me and send me your Blu-ray, I'll autograph it if you want that.
Nice. What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Anything you're comfortable sharing? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just mention that now, and I'll round all that up for the show notes.
Great. It would be Instagram. I mean, it can be anywhere for us, but it's at I'm Victoria Fratz for me. And then our production company is called at Social House Films.
Social. Okay, perfect. As I said, I'll round all that up and put that in the show notes. Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today. Good luck with this film. Lots of great information, and it's an inspiring story just hearing you guys getting out there and making it happen.
Thanks so much.
Well, thank you
for thinking of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys later.
Later. Bye.
I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide screenwriting leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Michael K. Feinstein, who wrote another modern dating story that revolves around dating through the various dating apps. Obviously, he has a very different take on the story, and his story on how he got this film produced is also very, very different. So I thought it would be an interesting comparison to see how two ultimately similar films came about through very, very, very different ways. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Victoria and Aaron. I think it's great what they did with the product placement, and it's fantastic they were so open with what they did and explained it all to us so that we could learn from it. It was a great little template and tutorial that she gave us. Victoria has a real knack for this sort of thing, from creating the kick-ass deck to noticing a new brand in a billboard, and then being able to keep track of everything and pitch them, staying organized, being confident in your pitch, knowing how to make that pitch. I also do think the fact that she's got a good following on Instagram is another asset that plays into this whole thing. So that's all fantastic. And again, I just really applaud people that are going out like Victoria and Aaron and just really making things happen for themselves. They're not waiting for permission. They're not sitting around waiting for a producer to call them and say, hey, I'll raise the money. I'll go ahead and give you guys the money to make this movie. They just went out, they made things happen for themselves. But the bigger lesson is not that we should all run around and try all sorts of product placement in our productions. I mean, if you think this sounds like something you could do, then by all means go for it. I've talked about this before, but in the entrepreneurial community, there's this thing called your unfair advantage. And it's not a bad thing. It sounds like, I guess, it could be a bad thing, but it's actually a very good thing. It goes something like this. You know, what skill, talent, experience, or contact do you have that most other people simply don't have? That is your unfair advantage. So then the key is, how can you use that unfair advantage to your advantage? I'm terrible at making pitch decks. That sort of stuff just bores me to death, and I'm just not good at it. I'm not really good at pitching to people, and especially over the phone. And I'm not really into fashion at all, so I literally drove by this same billboard and never noticed it. So I'm not sure that what she's describing would really work for me. I mean, she has, again, sort of a knack for this, and she's taking that background in marketing, but it's more than just marketing. It's branding, understanding what brands want, having that Instagram following. Just it shows that she sort of understands how to sort of work these systems, and not in a bad way, but just understand these systems and work them to build a profile in them. And I think that sort of experience, number one, I think these brands will look at that and think this is the kind of person we do want to be associated with. And number two, I think having that actual experience of building her own brand on Instagram is a great precursor for doing this kind of work. But again, it's not for everybody. It may not be something that you particularly think you could do well. Again, I don't think this is something I could do well, but that's not really the point. The point is not, well, you can't do product placement like Victoria, therefore you can't have a movie. That's not the point. There are other things that you might do well. I mean, there's other things that I do pretty well. Maybe not these things that Victoria's describing, but for instance, I'm pretty organized, I'm persistent, and I'm pretty technical. So for me, one of the things that I did was starting this podcast. It plays into a lot of the skills and experiences that I have. A lot of people can't simply go out and start their own podcast for whatever reason. They don't have the technical skills, they don't have the time, they don't have the discipline, they don't have the persistence, whatever it is. I knew that this was something that I could probably do, and it has. It's gotten me to get to know a number of other producers. It's given me credibility with other producers, just having this outlet. So it's been an enormous educational and experience for me, and been very, very beneficial to my own screenwriting career. So again, that's me trying to look at what I can do well and leveraging that into my own unfair advantage. So that's the lesson that I would take from this interview. If you think your skills and experience match up pretty well with Victoria's, then by all means, really listen to what she's saying and use what she's saying as kind of a template and try and duplicate what she's done. Clearly, it can work. So that's fantastic. But if you find yourself listening to this thinking, I can never do that, this doesn't really match up with what I like to do or what I'm good at, that's totally fine too. Take a step back and try and figure out what you do well. What assets do you have? What things can you turn into your own unfair advantage? Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.